name is Alec, and I'm 11 years old. Books have taken me on adventures all over this world. Movies have shown me intense challenges that heroes face. My brother's video games have taught me that a gruesome death will come quickly if you're not paying attention. It's a wild world out there, and here in Texas, it gets even wilder. I am going to experience, explore, thrive, and survive these wilder lands. And you are coming with me!
So as with all road trips, the car tends to get messier and messier as the days go by, and keep in mind, this is towards the beginning of the trip. Here in this door, we've got some rain pans, you know, my knife and bear spray for protection. We've got water bottles, which fill up as often as we possibly can. Those will be good for when we start hiking on the trails. We've got this monopod here, which I've been using to take macro with this camera right here. And this is my little bag of goodies. I keep this camera that I'm filming on right now and the macro camera in there just so I can film whenever I need to. Here we got fishing regulations. So that brings me to my next thing, fishing equipment. Right here we have the illegal fishing equipment, and right here we have the legal fishing equipment. So varying by body of water, you know, the regulations change, and a lot of those regulations involve barbless hooks. So I've had to take all the baits that I can remove barbed hooks from and put barbless hooks on them. Got our charging station right here. As you can see, we got 2 phones plugged in that right now. We've got battery chargers because we've got about 4 different types of batteries for all the different cameras that we've got. These are the 2 lifelines to charge said batteries. We got a whole bunch of music right in here to keep us sane on those hours and hours of driving when there's nothing cool to look at. But luckily, once we get into the parks, there's lots of deer and elk everywhere, so we like to keep an eye out. Got lots of music, CDs, candy here and there, books to write stuff down in as soon as we think of it, just so we don't forget it. We've got our entire itinerary packed in here. That's a month's worth of what we're planning on doing. But then as we move towards the back, it becomes less and less like a car and more like a battle zone, as you can see. There's some chips. My hair's stuck in this thing up here, and I don't know how to get it out because I can't see it. Okay, I'm safe now. These are little tag things for different Texas state parks. As you can see, there's one, there's one. Then we got food, more rain jackets, chairs, and here we got tons of food that'll last us on the trail, which we have a lot of it. Stuff that we try and keep cold, which we have to replace ice quite often. Not as often as we do in Texas though, which is nice. Tons of layers here. There's a tripod there. There's my bag. There's the big camera. There's some hiking poles. There's my other camera bag, which we will be taking the big camera in to conserve space because we don't want to have 2 backpacks on, one being the camera bag, one being the giant pack. And then we got a whole ton of stickers right here from all the different places that we've gone to. We've gone to a lot more places than that, but these are the ones that we've collected stickers for. And then moving back here, the toiletries, which we'll have to pack away into the bags. It seems like we always have to be digging for stuff, like we're archaeologists trying to find my toothbrush or trying to find my knife or my hatchet or firewood or whatever. Here's a perk box, so we'll be using that to send out all the perks for the fundraiser that we did, meaning postcards and whatever the heck. Gotta sign those. And here we got some water shoes, tons of perks, survival book right there, first aid kit, which is very important, mics, lanterns, lights, all sorts of random stuff, water filters, lots and lots of batteries and cords, as you can see. There's some more boxes. I mean, you can just keep digging for hours, and sometimes I get lost in here and I can't find my way out. I've been lost for like 3 days, but luckily there's a lot of freeze-dried food in there that I've been able to eat. And then over here, just more and more stuff. As you can see all the layers. It's like at the Grand Canyon, when you can see all the geological layers over time. You can see this is the beginning of time right here, where the seats used to be back in the day. There's a water bottle that's been lost for who knows how long. I am looking like a ghost. I'm gonna come in here. Showing you guys how crazy it is to be on a road trip like this, but it is definitely a lot of fun. Just takes a little bit of digging around in the car in order to find what you need. Like, here's a stove. Wow. But yeah, pretty cool. Okay, you guys, you ready? Here we go. All right, you guys, so the backpacking adventure has officially begun. Right now, I've got my camera sitting on top of my monopod, which is also my hiking stick. But you guys, it is beautiful out here. I mean, just take a look around. You definitely know you're in the middle of a forest. And it's beautiful, beautiful greenery all over the place and fresh air. It just feels great to be out here. It feels great to be getting some exercise. And the hardest part of today has definitely been packing. As you can see, I've got this big old pack on my back. Last time I carried one of these was when I was much smaller. Definitely a lot easier now, even though these are still pretty heavy. And one thing I've noticed, you know, we are filmmakers, so we're out here with all this camera gear, you know, stuff that's not necessarily essential to survival. Where other people who are out here just for recreational purposes, just getting hikes in and enjoying life, just for the hike, you know, they don't have to carry all the camera gear with them. They've just got the essentials that they need to survive out here. So we are definitely squeezing stuff in much more than I think other people are, taking advantage of every little gap and every little piece of space, but it's definitely worth it because it is going to be a beautiful trek and I want to capture all on film, all with you guys. I've got my macro camera in here, and then this camera also goes in there just for easy access. And we have got lots of rain in the forecast, which makes a whole nother difficulty there. We've got to make sure that we can keep everything dry, cameras, equipment. So I've got a little rain fly that I can just pull out over my bag. And then we discovered that the other bag has a rain fly that wasn't quite fit for it. So we've been trying to figure out what can we do, like tie ponchos around it, trash bags. So I think we'll have to come up with some sort of little mechanism with all the waterproof materials that we've gathered for when the time comes. But yeah, it is beautiful out here. And we are going to be hiking along the coast, along the Olympic coast. So we're going to be going about 3 miles in today to the ocean, and then we'll be camping there. And then we will continue our hike later on after enjoying the sights. And yeah, just tons of plant life. This area is definitely full of lots and lots of biomass, just plants everywhere. All this greenery, all this vegetation has just built up over thousands of years in this prehistoric area. It's great to see an untouched land. This is what this area looked like long before humans ever showed up, and hopefully it's what it will continue to look like for forever. Alright, you guys, so I may look a little bit sweaty and my hair's out of place. That's because about half a mile in or so, we realized that we only had a few memory cards, and I had already filled up this one, so that wasn't very good. So I decided to just make the run back. Luckily I ran cross country this year, so I'm in shape enough to do such things. I'm just not used to the pants, rain pants, undershirt, overshirt, and hiking boots while doing so. Usually I have on something a little more comfortable, but it's better to remember at the beginning of the trip than when I'm all the way 3 miles in and then I have to run 6 miles to get the memory cards. So we're good to go now. Okay. See, I thought my notoriously shaky hands were gonna be the issue here, but obviously it's the elements that are gonna push something over this bridge. it is beautiful out here. As you can see, I have the sea behind me. And there are lots of rocks down there. It is low tide coming to high tide, so the water is rising, but it's still pretty far down, so hopefully we can find some tide pool creatures. But my back is soaked with sweat. And just to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what this is like, there's a trail that when we turn onto the coast coming along, there's little campsites all along the way. So we had to pass by all these different people. There's quite a few people out here camping actually. You just find a spot like this, set up your tent, and then there's a little area for making a fire. And there are bears and raccoons and blackbirds out here. I know as soon as I set down my pack, a blackbird flew down and landed on it because I wasn't monitoring it. So you want to make sure that you watch your stuff, because the bears and the raccoons and the blackbirds are quite fond of taking your food. So there's certain precautions that we'll get into later for that. But yeah, we're gonna get established and maybe adventure around before the sun goes down. Well, you guys, we have made it, and I hope you're warm, because I am a bit chilly. Luckily, I've got this jacket and all these layers. It's really coming in handy now. You know, I was sweating buckets on the way in, and now we have stopped, and the campsite is pretty warm. It's pretty calm, and then you come out here, and there's wind, and there's cold, and it's definitely a completely different environment. See, I told you, it's calm as can be. And I'm just filming on that rock right over there, like 100 yards down, and there's no wind up here, but there's wind down there. As you can see behind me, there are rocks everywhere. This is great tide pool areas. I've seen lots of little crabs and fish and anemones and all sorts of cool stuff. And one cool thing about these little islands that are off the coast of Washington is that the birds will actually use them as, you know, a defensive place to go and live their lives, and then they'll come into the mainland to eat, to pick around, pick up snails and whatever, and then they're safe there because there's no predators. And hopefully you guys can hear me because the wind is pretty strong. And yeah, tomorrow there looks to be a chance of rain, and possibly the next day and the next day, you know. That's our luck. We're gonna head back up to the campsite and see if we can make it a little homier. It's on time-lapse mode. So you guys, the rules back here are that you can have a campfire as long as you have it within a fire ring. So here we have what used to be a fire ring and is now more of a fire hill, I guess. So we have got the materials lying around, like rocks and logs and all that, to contain the fire, but we just need to put it together, and I'll leave it here for the next people who come through. As Smokey the Bear says, only you can prevent forest fires. So let's get preventing. The wind is taking a toll on my hair. So you guys, we have a beautiful fire ring right here behind me. As you can see, just gathered a few stones from around the campsite and put them together in a ring shape, and there we go, we have a fire ring. We got a nice log here to block out the wind coming from the ocean, and the rule here is that you can only burn driftwood. And as you can see behind me, there's plenty of driftwood. So I don't know if I'm gonna have a fire tonight or not, but what do you say we go on a driftwood hunt? Let's go. So, for supper tonight, we will be having shepherd's meat pie, as you can see here, prepared only with boiling water. And we got our little camp spoon here. And the best part of this meal is that we have a beautiful view here, and that it is a ways away from our tent, so that if we spill, the bears will come over here and not over there. So, let's try it. This is dehydrated, it's good camping food, and also easy to pack away, and easy to fit inside of the bear can. Doesn't it look delicious? Does it taste delicious? Mmm. So one thing that kind of goes hand in hand with backcountry camping is, where do you get your water? Because, you know, an average gallon of water weighs about 8 to 10 pounds, and when you're bringing everything in your camp on your back, you don't really want to be carrying that many gallons of water, which is going to weigh you down and it'll take up a lot of space. So the other options are you could filter water, and that's what we were planning to do. We've got a fancy little water filter, and you just got to find a freshwater source because the one that we have doesn't filter salt water. So we found our freshwater source. It's a little tiny stream, and when I say tiny, I mean tiny. It's this teeny tiny little stream with little puddles of water, and it's full of tannins, which makes the water brown. It's from the plants. It leaches into the water, which they don't harm you. I mean, you can drink them and you'll be fine, but we figured that since we've got options, you know, we aren't in a really survival situation and we know the rain is coming, we thought, hey, why don't we catch some rainwater and try that out? So we've got a few different ideas, and the first one involves this log right here. So this log has a very peculiar shape, and when you are collecting rainwater, you want as much surface area as possible to collect the droplets and then put them into one single stream and then lead them down into the water bottle. Now, I'm not exactly sure how hydrophobic this log is, meaning like will it repel water rather than absorbing it into itself, but we'll give it a go. I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. So I'm going to go ahead and alter this log so that I can use it to my advantage. Gonna pop out the trusty knife here, and we're just gonna, you know, kind of cut out little pieces that we need out, and this being one of them. So there you go. And it's a little bit dirty, so we'll kind of brush it off best we can. And if we really have to, once we collect the rainwater, we could filter it through our little filter, but it's not very necessary, you know. Most rainwater is pretty pure, I mean, unless it's acid rain. But yeah, we'll keep shaping this up and then see if we can't set the water bottle so that the rainwater will go down into it. So I've decided to utilize some primitive sandpaper, meaning just sand and a rock. So all you gotta do is get your grit, put it down on the log, and get a flat rock like this you can get your hands on, and just rub it back and forth. And it's just gonna wear away the wood and kind of flatten it, make a nice surface for the water just to go straight down into. I'm just digging out a little hole for the water bottle to sit. I've cut out a notch in the wood right there. Just make sure there's no dirt in there or anything. And that's where the water should drip from into the water bottle. I got wood in my water. There goes all that water. But yeah. Well, that should be pretty good. Fingers crossed. I brought a grass and a rock. Today we made the hike from right here over here in the main little area all the way, and then we hike down this little stretch of beach, and we're camping right about there. So tomorrow we are going to pack things up and we're going to be hiking down this long stretch of beach. The tide rises and falls as does every tide in every ocean, but there's these little peaks right here where the land jumps out, and we got to watch a tide chart and read it to make sure that the tide will be low enough for us to cross. Otherwise, there's a little trail right back in there that you can see where you could cross over on the land. And here's some petroglyphs. Maybe we'll see some history. The tide changes all the time due to the moon phases and whatnot. So if we break out the tide chart, which is in here somewhere, not that, not that, yes. So you can see the tide fluctuating up and down more drastically with the more the moon shows and all that good stuff. But you can see this is going to be a high tide point, which is 8:32 a.m. and then it goes down, down, down all the way until it reaches 2:29 p.m. So that's going to be the low point, and then it's back on the rise all the way until 9:10 p.m. So you're going to wanna be hiking those little points in this little area when the tide is low enough for you to pass through. Good morning, you guys. So as you can hear, there's a pitter-patter of rain on the tent this morning, and that pitter-patter was a bit more violent a little bit earlier. It was pouring down, and we could see where we stored the packs had begun to flood. Water had begun coming in, but luckily the rain has slowed down a bit so that we can get the packs inside. And I am packing inside, as you can see, and the reason is because I don't want everything to get wet. So I've got a towel here, I'm drying off the bear cans and everything that was outside that did get dampened, and trying to fit it back inside the pack so that we can cover it with waterproof covers and get on our merry way this morning. And yeah, it's rained quite a bit, so that should mean that our water bottles are pretty filled with water. Not all the way, but pretty good. Hopefully our contraption has worked out well. So we have everything packed up, as you can see there behind me. The campsite's all clean. Seems like everything stayed together, which is good. And look at that, there's quite a bit of water in there. It was a 1/4 inch of rain last night, so this looks like a bit more than a 1/4 inch. Holy cow. Yeah, that's quite a bit. That's like 2 inches. So I was able to use the surface area to its advantage and gather as much rain as possible and put it in there. We'll go ahead and filter that out, and then it will be some nice fresh water straight from the sky. And yeah, I think we would have even gotten a little more if we had gone like right out in some direct sky area, because there is a little bit of cover here, but it worked out pretty well, and I'd call that a success. You staying dry? Because I sure am not. We have hiked down farther along the Olympic coast, and the rain that was forecasted has arrived. And there are lots of trees on the Olympic coast, I've noticed. Lots of driftwood, lots of fallen trees, which makes for a very original little landscape. And the waves are getting pretty rough out there, and currently taking a time lapse on my little camera, just watching the clouds go by. And the cool thing is there's these little islands off the coast that make for some cool scenery. Alright you guys, so one cool thing about this beach is that as you walk farther and farther down towards the water, the rocks seem to get smaller and smaller. And that's just from thousands of years of the rocks tumbling around in the waves and wearing down the outer layers. So you can see here we got some bigger rocks, and as we move into this area, the rocks are getting smaller and smaller down to the point where we got these tiny pebbles. And this is where you really start to see it. So take a look at these rocks, look at the size, and now you can see they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller until we'll eventually reach sand, just as long as we don't get hit by a wave. Oh, here comes the wave. So we have hiked to a very primitive location out here, and it is absolutely gorgeous. As you can see behind me, there is a big flowing river, and it has some of the clearest water that I have ever seen. And I'm gonna go ahead and pop my underwater camera into the water just to show you guys what it looks like. But a lot of Washington's rivers are connected or fed by glacial melt, which gives it this kind of blue color. Sometimes it's a little milkier, but that's the glacial silt from the melting glaciers that is inside of the water. So it's a really pretty color. Well, that water is not warm by any means, and it feels like I just got out of an ice bath. Like my hand hurts, that's how cold it is. Like when there's a Capri Sun at the bottom of the cooler and you just filled it with ice, but it's got some of the melted water from the day before, and you're reaching down in there and you can't find it because it's covered by a bunch of applesauce packets. And that's what your hand feels like when you put it in this river. I would not like to be a fish in here. How are you guys? So I'm hiking through this creepy little forest over here. You can see there's just like lots of dead trees covered in moss. There's the sun up there peeking through. There's this little creek running here. And we recently learned that there is actually a mountain lion or a cougar that's been coming through here pretty often. And if you guys know, if you ever come in contact with an angry cougar, you're supposed to make yourself look as big as possible, like open up your jacket and make noise and try and scare it away. The last thing you want to do is turn around and run, because the predator-prey sense will kick in and they'll chase you down, even if they weren't intending to in the first place. We have arrived at our next site and set up camp. As you can see behind me, there's a tent, and you might be able to hear something in the distance. So if we walk down this way through this little winding trail, it may seem like the usual forest that we have been in, but as we make our way farther down, it opens up into the Pacific Ocean. And you can see that there's not much of a trail here. It kind of just drops off into an abyss. Now maybe we can find a way to get down a little safer, but for now I think we'll take the trails. I found a cool little place to sit and take a break. There is a freshwater stream going right under me out to the ocean. And this is pretty cool. It's a little area where the just water runs through under all these pebbles and above in this area. But one cool thing about that is if it was a larger body of water like a river, then there's certain species, like different salmonoid species, that will go in between the salt water and the fresh water, like go out into the ocean and then come back into the fresh water to spawn. So it makes for a very neat little ecosystem. But it is a beautiful evening. The sun is making its way down, and boy, am I glad to see that sun. It has been a great day enjoying the sunlight, and hopefully it continues. Alright, you guys, so it's been about 5 days since we've seen a shower. You guys are starting to stink, so I think it's time that we take a little dip in this waterfall here under these roots. How fitting, right? There's a big old tree up there just holding itself up with every inch of its life. But here we have a perfectly clean, flowing stream, so let's take a dunk. Ah, refreshing. That is a bit chilly, but it feels great. Well, it smells good, but it just tastes like hot water. Still good though, I don't mind. Keep you warm on a cold night. Alright, you guys, good morning. It is about 5:30 a.m. and it is supposed to be the lowest tide of the month so far. As you can see, it's pretty far down, but it is like Sand Dollar City out here, you guys. If these were actual dollars, I'd be rich. They're everywhere. And we can see some tide pools exposed a little farther down, but we're just gonna hike and see what we can find this morning. So, let's go. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, it's about 41 degrees out and windy, so it's a little brisk. So we've stumbled upon some sort of jelly-like substance, and not sure whether it's egg casing or if it's a species of jelly, but there are these little sand fleas, it looks like, on there eating away. Little guys cleaning up. Alright, you guys, so as we hiked down the beach, out of nowhere came these giant rocks, as you can see here behind me, and I think we may have discovered a cave. So what do you say we go explore it? Just climb up here without falling down. And it's really cool rock formation. I mean, look at this. It's like just all these pebbles holding themselves together, and then there's all these holes on the ground. But tucked back away in here with all these crane flies and the moss on the ceiling is a little cave. So let's hope I don't repeat my past and bang my head right on the top. But yeah, it looks pretty cool. It's crazy. The ceiling doesn't even look like it should be held together, but it is. So we won't be messing around too much because I don't want to knock the ceiling upon my head. But this is what it looks like back in here. It's pretty dark inside, but a cool little shelter if needed. And then we have a nice archway made of natural rock with an ocean view. Isn't that a nice little piece of real estate? Alright you guys, so after trying and losing one lure, getting snagged a few times, I finally decided to just try for the little ones. There were lots of little minnows swimming around, and I was hoping some of them were baby trout, and guess what? They are. So this looks to be maybe a baby brook trout. Before you handle these guys, you want to wet your hands because they've got such small scales that it can mess with their slime coat. But they're a beautiful fish. Just had a little piece of gummy bait on the end. It's not scented, it has no flavor, so it's legal here. But yeah, this is a barbless hook, so it should be easy just to pop him right off and get him back in the water, so we will do just that. You guys, so after hours of trying, I finally seem to catch myself what looks to be a brook trout. So when handling these guys, you want to wet your hands first. So I'm gonna hop down here. He's barely hooked, and this is a barbless hook, so I had to get him in really quick. Unfortunately, we couldn't film the landing because of occurrences like that. So if I can just get my hands on him, they are a beautiful fish, but they are very, very slippery. They've got these superb colors on them. As you can see, these orange dots and yellow dots. But holy cow, that was so cool. I finally decided to come over to the rocks where it got a bit deeper, and sure enough, they're waiting in the current, waiting to hit stuff, and this guy swung and missed about 3 times before finally nailing it. But we're gonna get him back in the water as soon as possible because they are delicate fish. Okay guys, so somehow I have done the impossible. We have caught 2 fish out of this river, and I was not expecting to catch more than that little one. So I am so thankful, and this guy, seems to be a little bit bigger. I was gonna show you how easy it is to unhook, but I think he did it himself. The beauty, looks like he's over a foot long, same species, and we're gonna get him back in the water as soon as possible. So thank you very much, Mr. Fish. Alright you guys, so here we have an interesting little creature. I know this one looks like a booger, but it is actually a banana slug, and he's asleep at the moment. They're always cruising around, quite slowly actually, going around eating vegetation and mushrooms and all sorts of good stuff. And for these guys, their eyes are super cool because they can actually pull them in and out, and they'll kind of close inside of themselves, like roll back in if they get scared, and then they'll pop right back out like a little antenna. They've actually got quite an interesting mating ritual. If you want to kill some time, look that up. It's pretty weird and involves a lot of slug slime. But yeah, banana slugs are pretty cool.
Turn right on West Marine Drive.
So I don't know if you guys can see this, but behind me, it is just crazy how far the tide has gone out. We're in an area that's referred to as a clam bed, and boy does it look comfy. But that's because there are lots of clams in this area because the tide goes out so far and it's so flat that there's just tons of walking room that you can go and go clamming. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be going around feeling through the sand with our hands. We're gonna be looking for 2 different types of clams. One is called a manila and one is called a cockle. So we will see if we can't dig some of them up and then maybe cook them and have a snack. And yes, you can use tools for this. I'm just using my claws. Well, you guys, it's been about 15 minutes. Got sand packed under my nails, but I finally found the prized clam. This one is the manila clam, and he looks to be about regulation size. It needs to be at least 1.5 inches, which I measured, and 1.5 inches is about the length of that finger right there. And as you can see, he is well past it, measuring from this side to this side. And I have a clam license, so I can go ahead and keep this guy for lunch. But we'll keep on looking as long as we got sun in the sky. Keep on clam hunting. But yeah, so we have successfully found a clam. It's been about an hour, maybe hour and a half, and got about 30-ish of these guys, and they're all regulation size. So I'm thinking what we're gonna do is go ahead and put these guys in a bucket of salt water, about 6 inches of salt water, and that allows them to kind of discharge any of the sand that is built up inside of them, because these guys do filter the water and the grit and everything. So once they push out as much sand as possible, then you can cook them up and they should be good to eat. So put them in a bucket of water tonight and probably cook them up tomorrow. But it was a successful day of clamming. That was easy. So you guys are probably wondering how the heck I got this tip of the rod stuck in the tree. And for a while I was kind of wondering that myself. But what happened is I cast it around the tree, and I guess I cast it a certain amount of times that it inched its way out every time. And then it flew off around the tree with the lure and got stuck in the branches. I thought, well, I'm all right, it's still attached with the lure and everything, so I started yanking and yanking. Not that hard, but because I pulled on the line so many times, it cut it. And then the lure fell into the water and the tip was just sitting there teetering on these branches. So that's how it got stuck out there with no safety line. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, that tastes delicious. It tastes just like the clams you get in clam chowder or that you buy from the store, and it makes you pretty proud when you caught them yourself. So, I'm pretty happy with this meal. So I have managed to capture a crab from the little tidal zone here. I could see him burying himself, so I ran out before the waves covered him up. Looks to be a boy, judging off the symbol on his belly, and he's got fins on the back you can see here, so he swims around in the water. And yeah, he's a pretty hefty little guy. So we'll go ahead and get him back in the sand. Alright, you guys, so I found a little washed out area by the ocean that had some clay, so decided to grab some and see if I can't make a little pot. Have a little bit of water. And this is pretty pure clay, and with pure earth clay comes little pieces of rock and stuff, and that makes the pot not work as well. So if I see any rocks, I'll pull them out, twigs and stuff. And I also noticed a plant around here is called, well, they've got twin blackberries on them, so they're, or black twin berries, I think it is, where the Native Americans actually used to use them to paint. So if I can get this little pot made correctly, I might be able to paint it, make it look prettier. Now, like with all ceramics, once I get this formed, I'm gonna have to put it in a bit of a homemade kiln and fire it up, and that'll just harden the clay. It won't be as good as, say, a like store-bought one where the clay is really processed, because this is just natural clay, but it should do the job. You know, it's pretty obvious now why one of those spinny tables, you know, that spins the pottery around is pretty helpful, because one way just to fill up the cracks is just to rub your hands back and forth across the imperfections, and when it's spinning, I mean, you just shape your hands to however you want it. Right now I've got to hold it and try and not cave it in. Well, you guys, I think I'm pretty good for now, but through, you know, kind of playing with it and moving it around, I've started to realize that it is a little more of other types of sediment, not just clay, and that's kind of expected. You know, most of the time you want to take a few days to filter it out using water and all this, but I'm just gonna give it a go, see how it turns out, and yeah, let's start up the fire and get it dried out. Okay guys, so now we're just gonna go ahead and set this in by the fire and allow it to dry off a bit. And once the fire turns into embers, we're then going to bury the pot within the embers and kind of build the fire over it again, and that will be the kiln. And we'll continuously blow on it and then just kind of leave it be, and hopefully it hardens into a nice watertight pot. that didn't exactly work. Don't think I'm gonna be eating my cornflakes out of that bowl. But have no fear, because one way of refining your clay is to dry it out in a fire or the sun, and in this case we did it in the fire. So we'll go ahead and pop this out, crush it up into a powder, remove any foreign objects, and then maybe wet it and try it again, and we can add some temper, which sand works great, and luckily for us, we're at the beach. So trial and error, we'll give it another go. You know what? I go ahead and smash it right here. There's probably gonna be powder everywhere, so we can put the welcome mat right here under the rock, and that will catch the debris. And now we can smash it. And I know some pieces are still a little bit damp, so once we get it all kind of ground up, we can lay it out in the sun, maybe go on a hike or something, and then it should be pretty dry. So I think the issue last time was, one, that it is very unfiltered clay, so it does have little particles, organic matter in there that once it burns, it's gonna create gaps, and there were all sorts of cracking issues. And another reason for the cracking was, in an environment like this where you've only got a campfire to work with and not a manufactured kiln, it is very high fluctuation in temperature, and that can cause the pot to crack. So we'll add some temper, and hopefully that will help us next time. Alright, you guys, you ready for a hike? You got your boots on and your laces tight? Because we're gonna be going on a hike. Did you guess that? I bet you did. We are hiking on the beach right now, and the hike's gonna be about maybe 4 to 6 miles long, and the tide is making its way in, so we gotta make sure not to turn our back to the ocean, because that's how you get wet boots and getting swept out to sea. As you can see right now, the waves are chasing my heels, and we're gonna have to take refuge on these rocks if we want to escape that. But yeah, there's gonna be lots of cool stuff on the hike. As you can see behind me, there is a little grassy, tree-covered mountain, and we're going to be making our way up that. And here comes a big wave. But yeah, we're just going on a hike, waiting for our clay to dry off and seeing what sights there are to see. The fog is thinning out a little bit, and the sun is out, which is fantastic. Just watch your step on these rocks, because they are a bit slick. Isn't it beautiful? So according to the tide charts, the tide tonight is going to be coming up about 2 feet higher than it usually does. So that is why we are having to take refuge on these rocks to escape the waves. And yeah, there won't be any tide pooling today, as the waves are so high up on the beach. So when you're on a hike like this and you're out in a primitive location, let's say you didn't pack properly and you've gone through your water, and you see this nice cold water, freshwater stream moving right through here, it's a perfect opportunity, if you brought a filter, to do so. to filter the water, get some water. And next to my bag of clay, I've got a fancy little water filter here. And you don't typically want to just drink the water straight out of the stream because there are little creatures in there that you don't want to drink that can make you pretty sick. So one of these high-grade, super nano tiny filters works great. So we're just going to go ahead and pop off the top, and we're going to connect the output to the output and the input to the input. There's the output. Here is the input. Then we got a handy dandy little floating device right here. If the water was a little deeper, just drop it in and it floats around. And all you have to do then is start pumping it. So you open it up and you just pump away. And then what's happening is it's sucking up the water through this series of little filters, filtering out the mechanical little side of it, so like the larger particles that can be taken out with the larger filter, and then the smaller particles like little bacteria and little giardia and stuff you don't want in there. So as you can see, there's some nice clean water going into the cap right there. And that is some crystal clear cold water right there. I mean, it looks just like tap water, like it came right out of your sink, and that is good to drink. So, cheers. And if you're really clever, you can just figure out how to put a water bottle lid on. Apparently I am not that clever. But if you are really clever, you can angle it and just drink out of it like a water fountain. So we have gotten back into the woods now, and I've noticed a lot of these little guys here in the Pacific Northwest, and that is the plantain. And no, it's not the one that looks like a banana. It is this leaf right here, and there's a few variations of them, but here we have a little plantain, and these are actually a wild edible. You can eat them raw or you can cook them, but they are difficult to palate. I've noticed they're very bitter, and they're kind of fuzzy and rough and rubbery, so I'm not a big fan of them. I tried, but one cool thing, if you look right there, there are the little veins popping out. And these guys can actually be pulled out just like that, and you can tie that into cordage. It's very short pieces of cordage, but it is fairly strong. So it's a useful little plant to know if you're in the Pacific Northwest. You know, another cool plant that I have noticed as well is these guys, and they look kind of like a brush that you'd use to clean out your drain or something, but what they resemble very closely is a plant that we have in South Dakota called horsetail, which is pretty much this plant but without all the frills. So maybe this is a variation of horsetail, but it definitely resembles a Jurassic Park-esque, you know, ancient prehistoric plant type thing, along with a lot of these ferns back here. But one cool thing about these guys is that they actually grow in sections. So if you pull it off, there's a little straw right there, and you can pull off, and there's just tons of little sections, and you could use them as straws, I guess, if you really wanted to. I don't know if they're toxic or not, so don't use them as straws, but it's an idea. Now, one plant that I have noticed a lot up in this area, especially in the rainforest, and it really makes you feel like there should be dinosaurs walking around, is this guy, these huge leaves right here. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have any of these guys in my direct vicinity when I was down on the coast and I was collecting rainwater, but these guys would be a great option to do so, because if you look at them, they all point down into the center, and that's so they've got a lot of surface area with these broad leaves to collect rain as it falls and put it down to the roots so that it can drink it on up. But if I wanted to, I could like put my water bottle right in there and kind of tie these leaves in kind of a bunch, and you can see it would just direct all the rainwater in that area right into the bottle. So it's an option. We are getting up there, as you can see, and I wanted to stop and take a look at this little guy right here. This is Usneolichen, and this is a very helpful little thing because it has antimicrobial properties, which means you can use it on a wound and it will help to keep it from getting infected. And it's also good for starting fires. It's very dry, and once it catches, it just catches a flame like crazy. But this is what it's looking like behind me. The sun's reaching the edge there, so we might have to head down pretty soon so that we aren't hiking back in the dark, which is dangerous. And yeah, it was definitely worth the hike. Now you guys, hiking at these kind of elevations is very dangerous, so I would not recommend vlogging and hiking at the same time, because if you lose your footing, you'll go all the way down. Alright you guys, so I've spent about the past half hour grinding up all that stuff, and you can see it's in here now. Grinding it up with the hammer on my knife on that stone, and it seems to be pretty powdery now. And you know, the process I'm going through now is a bit more methodical, doing the precautions to ensure that it doesn't turn out as poorly again. But we're going to go ahead and give this a try. So here I've got my powder, and we're just going to add a little bit of water and then kind of mix it around until it is the consistency that we need. Alright, may have added just a bit too much water, but it should be alright. And now that we've got it all mixed up with water, we're gonna add some temper this time, which is going to be sand in this case. And what the temper is going to do is just give the clay something to hold on to, so it should reduce cracking. And we're just gonna add about 10% temper to the clay and get it all mixed in there nice and evenly. Alright you guys, so the clay that I was using, you might notice is a little bit darker out. That's because I've been drying it out for the last while, and the clay that I have been using is currently drying out because I put a little bit too much water. But I also collected another bag while we were on that hike earlier, and it is right here, and it's a little bit oranger. I'll give that bag of clay a try. Hopefully it works out, I don't know. We'll see, but yeah, we'll go ahead and do the same thing for both of them and pop it in the fire. Maybe, hopefully it'll work.
Man, where are you going? You just keep walking. Do you have a destination? Or are you just gonna walk? There's some big steps you're taking. You aren't going anywhere. Silly guy. Why don't you want to talk anymore? You were just talking. Being silly.
You think you're just so special you get to sit upon my camera? We need you down here. So go down here, because I need to take a picture of you, and I can't do that when the lens is right here. What do you think of that? Huh? You think you're so big and tough you don't even want to move? Just sitting there? Aren't you cool? Here, step on this. There you go, good boy. Now just stay there. Oh, quit walking. Quit walking. Stay there. Stay there. Now allow me to focus the camera. Where'd you go? Oh, he's on the move again. Come back here. Get on the stick. Okay, he's back on the stick. Maybe I just need to hold it. It's gonna be hard to focus. Now he's on the tip of the stick. I need to set you down. I can't hold the stick that still. Heck. Oh, he's on the move again. Get back here. Stay on the stick. You are so energetic. Get back on the stick. There he is. Okay, now just stop running. Just stay right there. Stay. Do you ever get tired? Just running back and forth. Stop. Where'd he go? Oh, he's on the camera again. Oh my gosh.
Never work with children, animals, or little flies, because they do not sit still. Stop moving. Now he's on me. I'm not paying you to act unprofessional, mister. Sit still. Where is he? He's on the camera, now he's on my finger. Stay on the stick. Stay on the stick. There, stay right there. Maybe in the sun. Oh, now he's on the table. Stay on a stick. And he's on my hand. You can't move when I take the picture.
So, one cool wild edible that I've seen quite a lot of up in the Pacific Northwest is the salmonberry, and it looks just like a raspberry, except it is like golden colored, and that is referred to as a compound berry with all these little nodules on it. And for the most part, those guys do tend to be edible, but you always want to make sure that you know what type of berry it is before you eat it. These guys on the I know for sure that they are edible, they can be eaten, and they've got kind of a bland taste, not super sweet, and they are a very good food source for the animals out here. I know the elk love to eat them, and they grow absolutely everywhere. So, good little trail snack. Pop them in your mouth, leave the rest for the animals. So we are by the ocean right now, and I'm just hiking up these rocks to see if we can get an idea of what it looks like on the other side. Maybe get some bearings. Just be careful because the rocks are a bit slick. But it sounds like a freight train on the other side as the waves crash up on it. You guys doing all right? It's a bit of a workout, for sure. And there we have it. There is the ocean. So this way is north, that's Washington, that's where we came from. And this way is south, and that's where we're headed. Giant waves crashing behind me, but I'm gonna climb back down before I get washed away out to sea and see what else we can find. So I'm in this little inlet right here along the ocean, and as you can see behind me there's water dripping down, there's lots of moss and stuff on the walls. But I noticed that in these little crevices there are these little ocean bugs right here, and they may look like cockroaches, but these are actually a type of isopod. So they're related to like the little roly-polies that you find in your backyard or under logs. You might also know them as isopods or wood lice or armadillo bugs or whatever. But these guys are related to shrimp, and they are very interesting little creatures. There's some giant isopods that live in the ocean, but these guys are more terrestrial. You guys, this is one of the weirdest places that I have ever been. It may look like I'm hiking by the forest that I have come to know and love as I've been here in the Pacific Northwest, but if we look down, it's a different story. There is sand under my feet all over the place, and the weirdest part of that is that the ocean is like miles that way. It's not even close. It's like the dunes didn't know when to stop. So now I'm just hiking through this excruciatingly difficult terrain. Get your calves burning because it is not easy to hike in the dunes. But what do you guys say? We go for a little jump. Geronimo! And we are back in the forest now, and I have piles of sand in my boots. But I guess we'll hike right back up. Well, you guys know me, I can't seem to stay away from fishing for too long, so I'm planning on doing just that. We have come down the sand dunes. As you can see behind me, there's like some foresty area and there's a dune way back there somewhere. And in the middle is this beautiful, nice freshwater lake. And I've heard some pretty good stuff about the fishing here, so we'll go ahead and give it a try because it is imperative that I catch a fish tonight for dinner. So you guys, what do you say we get the line wet and test our luck? Alright you guys, so I just decided to switch baits, and out comes a little rainbow trout, as you can see here. And the minimum size of rainbow trout here in Oregon is, well, in this region of Oregon, is 8 inches. And this guy looks to fit the bill, but I think I might try for something just a little bit bigger. So we'll go ahead, get this guy unhooked, and get him back in the water. And there he goes. Looks to be another little rainbow trout. Quite a small guy. This one's actually much smaller than the last one, but he looks to be a little bit more colorful. This guy is a fine example of why they call them rainbow trout, because there's that pink little stripe down the middle like a little rainbow. And they are very slippery because they have such small scales and a nice slippery slime coat. But we'll get him back in the water and off to where he came from. Bye-bye. And the third fish of this 10-minute little time period of putting on the worm, and yet another rainbow trout. Still pretty small. I heard there's lunkers in here, so hopefully I can hook up on one of those guys. But third rainbow trout, get him back in the water. There he goes. And the fourth rainbow trout. This guy's a little bit larger than the previous ones, about the same size as the first one really. But we'll go ahead and put him back, stick to our word of shooting for a bigger fish. So, I have seen quite a lot of these little guys swimming around in here. You can see that little guy looks like an underwater lizard, but he is actually called a newt. And this is, I think, the red spotted newt or orange spotted newt, something along those lines. And these little guys are cool because they live part of their life on land and part of their life in the water, so they are amphibians. Like, I found them before flipping rocks by lakes, and then I also see them swimming in the water. There's another one way over there, and then there's one right there. Oh, that's the same one, never mind. But they are a lot of fun. So you guys, remember how I said we were gonna cook up and eat that monster fish that I was gonna catch? Well, check this out. Yeah, we're gonna be having Spam tonight. Spam? I love Spam. You know, the good old mystery gelatinous meat that we all know and love.
And now just a quick break for a little bit of Spam. Mmm.
So we're gonna be plopping this down here, chopping it up into slices like the good old days, and throwing it on the fire. So how about we get going? Mmm. Alright guys, so because my little clay bowl that I had made that might not actually be clay or is a really low quality grade of clay is still drying in the drying process and cracking every once in a while, then I have to fix those cracks. But that's a whole nother story. Because that is just not ready to use yet, I'm going to go ahead and make a little bowl out of duct tape. And duct tape is a great survival tool. If you have a little survival kit, go ahead and put duct tape in there because it's got a million different uses. And making a cup is one of them. So that's what we'll go ahead and do. And behold, the finished product. I know it looks like Oscar the Grouch is probably about to pop out of there, but it should do its job. It's made entirely of duct tape. It's got a little loop that I'll tie it to my belt loop with, and it's got a little fancy lid right there, and there's the inside, and there's no sticky parts facing out, so it won't stick to anything like my hair. Look at that, non-painful. And yeah, it might even be waterproof. It should be waterproof the way that I built it, and it should do its job. So how about we get using it? This is the stuff carpeting the ground here is called wood sorrel, and it looks like a giant clover, and it actually tastes like lemons. It's got what's called oxalic acid in it, and it has a bit of a sour taste, and it's actually really good. You can eat the petals, you can eat the stems too, but they're a little bit tougher. So if you just pick the petals, and you can also eat some of the flowers, if I see any flowers around here. So this is what the flowers look like. They got 5 little petals, and there's a few different types of wood sorrel, but this kind behind me is the kind that we'll be collecting. So go ahead and pick a few that don't have bird poop on them. And then we just pop them into the little pouch. Just like that. On to the next one. This is Oxeye Daisy. And here we have some crab apples. This one. Bacon. And back here we have some thimbleberries. Look at that one. Just peels up just like that. And these are salmon berries. is coming up tonight, I thought I would give you guys just a little tour of our camp. So, this light is very bright, as you can see. You can see my breath, it's pretty cold. That's how it usually is here. It is warm during the day and then it cools down so much at night that you can see my breath. But, I'm gonna give you guys just a little camp tour. So here is the main tent, and there's another tent, and that is because we are preparing for the arrival of a Mr. V Nimble. I think you guys know who that is. Over here we've got our solar powered light. Leave it out during the day and then it will go for most of the night, and it's pretty handy dandy. It's inflatable too. And here we've got the nice camera just pointing up at the stars. You can't really see them on this guy, but I'm gonna get ready to do a time lapse. If we head over here, we've got bundles of firewood because we have finally are gonna be staying out of sight for a little longer than usual, about 5 days. So it's good to just get a bunch of firewood so we don't have to run back and forth, because usually we've got to get new firewood all the time as we change sites and all that. Over here we've got all the little pamphlets and stuff of all the different animals and plants and whatnot. Over here we've got our campfire. We've got a little book down here, and inside is all sorts of pugs, and on top of that there's some drawings of edible plants and quotes and whatnot. Cool little things that we write down along the way. My hair, I look like Hagrid right now. My hair is so fluffy. And there's the campfire. Here is the frisbee. That's for playing, but mostly for fanning the fire so that it can warm up. And over here we've got this cool little thing that you don't really see at too many other sites. And that is, just flip on the lights real quick, that is this little box. And inside this little box we have stored all sorts of cool little things. I got my fishing stuff down there. I got the bowl that I had the fruit salad in, some little shells, little fishing pole, spatula, all sorts of cool stuff. And yeah, there's some playing cards. We've got those with the wild edibles so that you can learn as you play. And here we have the pot. And the pot is being a bit difficult. Every time it gets wet, it melts and tries to turn back into soil. Every time it gets dry, it cracks. As you can see, there's cracks. I've patched the cracks about 1,000 times. But not quite sure what to do with Mr. Pot. Okay, so I'll go ahead and deal you in. One for you, one for me. Alright, so don't show me your cards, okay? And just so we know, the wager is 1 pug, correct? Alright. So, we'll see what you got. Alrighty, not bad, but let's see what I got. 3 aces? No way. Well, you know what that means. You owe me a pug. Good night.
Wakey, wakey, wakey. Come on, it's time to get up. There are new possibilities for this sunny day. Come on, sleepyhead, get up!
My goodness, you guys, it has been an adventure. The last 20 days I've been sleeping out of a tent, wearing the same shirt every day. It's probably part of my skin at this point. I mean, it's time to retire it, is what I'm saying. But it is a beautiful region, you guys. We've made our adventure from the Olympic coast down to the Redwood coast, and this area is just packed with biomass. It really gives you a feeling of what it was like hundreds and thousands of years ago, because these trees are thousands of years old. I mean, they're ancient. And another side of the adventure that you don't really get to see in the episode is the people we meet. And it's been really cool meeting lots of different people along the way, sharing similar passions. We met one guy up in Washington who was a wildlife photographer and also an environmental activist, and was on his own sort of adventure through Canada in the northwestern corner of the United States. And we actually ran into him about 5 different times, which is crazy because we'd meet him and then we'd leave him and somehow we'd run into him again and again and again. But he was really fun to talk to and hear all of his different stories. Another guy that we had met while I was out fishing at one of the parks was a Vietnam veteran. And he was actually telling us about how after the war, for a few decades, you know, he was uncomfortable talking about his experiences in Vietnam. And he had finally come to terms with the whole experience and was more comfortable talking about it. So we got to hear all sorts of his stories, and he shared his experiences with us, and we got a much better idea of what it was like. As you know, I had made that clay pot, I'm thinking it's a little more mud than clay, a different type of silt or something, and it sure looks like clay to me, but I guess it's not. But I'm having all sorts of trouble with it and couldn't get it to fire up in a kiln. It just kept cracking and falling apart, and every time I get wet, it turned back into soil and all that stuff. So here at Alec and WILDerland, we're all about reusing, reducing, and recycling. So I decided to reuse the pot for a different purpose, and it's a pretty cool little purpose, a little cool way to end the trip, and that is to plant my own redwood. As you can see behind me, there are tons of beautiful coastal redwoods towering above. They're the tallest tree in the world, and they can live over 2,000 years old, which is insane. I've been lucky enough to be able to share all of my stories and adventures with you guys and hear stories and adventures of other people along the way. So imagine this little guy right back here growing for 2,000 years, all the stories that are going on around the world. And I mean, if the trees could talk, you guys, that is like the best history book that you could find. But I'm gonna leave him here for 2,000 years to come. Maybe when my body's frozen, I'll come back in my little UFO and visit him 2,000 years in the future. I'm gonna go ahead and take off, head back down to the beautiful state of Texas, and I hope you enjoy this adventure as much as I did. So, until next time, you guys, stay wild!